The man leading both the investigation and a heartbroken police force in Dallas is Chief David Brown. He joins me now live for his first interview since the horrific shootings. Chief, thank you for being here, and our deepest condolences to your department and to the city of Dallas.
Thank you very much, Jake.
Chief, an investigator told our affiliate WFAA that the domestic terrorist who killed these officers was planning a much larger attack than the deadly ambush he carried out on Thursday. What can you tell us about this larger plot?
It appears that our search of this suspect's home in Mesquite leads us to believe, based on evidence of bomb-making materials and a journal, that this suspect had been practicing explosive detonations, and that the materials was such that it was large enough to have devastating effects throughout our city and our North Texas area. We're convinced that this suspect had other plans and thought that what he was doing was righteous, and believed that he was going to make law enforcement and target law enforcement make us pay for what he sees as law enforcement's efforts to punish people of color.
So he had been planning something before the rally and maybe even before the deaths in Louisiana and Minnesota?
We believe so, and we believe that the deaths in Minnesota and the deaths in Louisiana just sparked his delusion to fast-track his plans, and saw the protest in Dallas as an opportunity to begin wreaking havoc on our officers.
Is there anything more specific in terms of what he was going to target beyond police officers?
That's undetermined at this point, but we're continuing to go through his laptop and his cell phones to figure out what other interactions and who else he might have been interacting with as a result of these plans. We still haven't ruled out, Jay, whether or not others were complicit. And it's just, the way we do things, we want to make sure we follow every lead and make sure we don't miss any pieces of evidence that might lead to other things that we don't know yet.
What else can you tell us that you might have learned from the killer's journals?
Well, I think that this killer obviously had some delusion. There was quite a bit of rambling in the journal that's hard to decipher. I can just add, at the scene where he was killed, there was he wrote some lettering in blood on the walls, which leads us to believe he was wounded on the way up the stairwell on the second floor of the El Centro building, and where we detonated the device to end the standoff, there was more lettering written in his own blood.
What did he write?
We are trying to decipher that, but he wrote the letters RB.
RB.
And we don't, RB, yes. So we're trying to figure out through looking at things in his home what those initials mean, but we haven't determined that yet.
After the shooting, you suggested that the gunman had to have had some knowledge of the parade route. You said, how would you know to post up there? And you also said that you have yet to determine whether or not there was some sort of complicity with the planning of this. Have you learned anything more about that?
Yes, we had information prior to the rally that the rally would only be a static event at the Belo Gardens, and that after the rally ended, that people would disperse and go home peacefully. We had no indications that anyone was planning any type of violence toward people or damage to our properties. And so we really did our security planning around the things that we've learned from the pre-planning meetings that the protesters had. Spontaneously, they began to march, and there was no route determined before this spontaneous march began, and they just began walking. What we know now is that this suspect was in a vehicle, what is a black Tahoe, and was leapfrogging the intersections in that vehicle and stopped well ahead of the march. You could easily see the march coming down the street they were walking, and saw an opportunity with some high perched positions, a couple of buildings in the pathway of the marchers, and decided to take the high ground and start shooting right away. And the vulnerability of our officers were, because it was such a spontaneous decision to march by the protesters, we had to leapfrog intersections to make sure they didn't get run over by vehicles, by traffic. So because we were not planning to block any streets because of the pre-planning meeting information that we received, and we had to scramble to block intersections, which did expose our officers to this attack. And this suspect took advantage of that, and once he was in a high perched position, officers did not know where the shots was coming from, and we are learning some of the positions of our deceased officers, and it was they were in a funnel, and it ended up being a fatal funnel there, and then this suspect continued to move and shoot from different angles from the high perched position down at street level, and then back up to the high perched positions at really diagonally, almost triangulating our officers with his rapid fire.
It sounds as though his military training really enabled him to be quite deadly in this horrific circumstance.
We don't normally see this type of moving and shooting from criminal suspects. We're convinced that the military style was a plan and that he had practiced this. And again, I agree with you, Jake, the military training he received, did influence how he planned to do it. I'm sure he had been deployed to Afghanistan according to his military record, and likely have been trained and taught that type of tactic.
There's a report out this morning that the killer said he would only speak with a black police negotiator. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. That's not something that we would have liked our police officials to divulge at this time until we got further into the information on the suspect's laptop, so we could fully understand the reasoning behind that. But since that's out, I have to be honest with you, that's true. And for a long time during the negotiation, because of the negotiators' expertise, the suspect wouldn't believe he was black until they talked some more. But during that talk, it didn't matter whether he was black because he was shooting at us. So asking for a black negotiator didn't make sense to us. It didn't matter to us, and it shouldn't make sense to anyone because that didn't lead to any type of peaceful resolution. But that is a request that did happen, but our police sources should not reveal that. I want to make sure I'm clear on that, so that the people that leak that information understand that you're getting in the way of us doing our job by leaking information, so stop it.
3 people were arrested in connection with the shooting, but the police have not immediately named them or said why they were being held. Can you tell us anything more about those 3 individuals?
Yes, during the protest that was planned as a static event, several people, 20 to 30 people, showed up with AR-15 rifles slung across their shoulders. They were wearing gas masks, they were wearing bulletproof vests, and camo fatigues for effect, for whatever reasoning. Doesn't make sense to us, but that's their right in Texas. And they marched, but when the shooting started, they began to run. And they began to run at street level across where the shooting was occurring. So for our officers, they were suspects, and I support that belief. Someone shooting from you from a perched position and people running with AR-15s and camo gear and gas masks and bulletproof vests, they are suspects until we eliminate that. So one of those persons, they turned themselves in because they ran and got away, and we put their picture out. We interviewed them and released them because we didn't have any evidence that they were part of this attack. One of the other individuals that was running, he could not legally carry the gun, so we charged that person with prohibited weapon, and they were brought to jail. One of the other suspects, a female, we released as well. She was running with those 2 who were armed, and our officers believed that she might have been associated with that, but once we interviewed her, we ruled her out as a suspect as well. But from our vantage point, with people carrying guns at protests, slung across them, wearing bulletproof vests and gas masks, while people are killing us, they're suspects until we rule them out.
So just to clarify, all 3 individuals have been released, and you don't believe that any of those 3 are complicit or involved in any way in these murders?
2 of the 3 were released. One was not legally able to carry a gun. They were charged with prohibited weapon, which is a misdemeanor charge here in Texas, when you can't legally carry a gun. And so 2 were released, and 1 was arrested for unrelated gun charges.
Something unprecedented happened in Dallas. The police department used a bomb robot to kill the gunman. Take us through that process. How did you make that decision?
I was in radio contact with the SWAT team negotiating once we had him pinned down in the 2nd floor of the El Centro College building. And they began conveying to me that this person was in a gunfight with them, and he was in a position such that they could not see him. He was secreted behind a brick corner, and the only way to either get a sniper shot to end his trying to kill us would be to expose officers to grave danger. The other option was to continue to negotiate. We had negotiated with him for about 2 hours, and he just basically lying to us, playing games, laughing at us, singing, asking how many did he get, and that he wanted to kill some more, and that there were bombs there, so there was no progress on the negotiation. And I began to feel that it was only at a split second he would charge us and take out many more before we would kill him. So I was planning a press conference. Before I walked out the door, I said, I want to plan when I come back from this press conference to end this. And I said, use your creativeness to come up with a plan to do it. When I got back from the press conference, they presented to me what was probably a 15-minute plan they put together to improvise our robot with a device to detonate behind the corner within a few feet of where he was that would take him out. And I approved it, and I'll do it again if presented with the same circumstances.